Welcome, Mr. Dulat, to News
you.
Laundry. Thank you for speaking to me. We go straight into your book. In your introduction, you have described the Kashmiri character. You've said the Kashmiri is a most complex character and not easy to fathom or engage with. He's the nicest, gentlest, kindest, most sensitive of human beings. Yet he can also be devious and prone to exaggeration. Ask any militant his life story and he will inevitably begin with the grievances of Kashmir and Kashmiris, sighing every now and then to express his predicament and curse his luck. Now, would you say that this characterization fits Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah and Mehbooba Shabir Shah?
You see, Dr. Farooq and Omar have grown out of this, I think. So they would not fit into the same category. But yes, it does come out at times. And Dr. Farooq is a quintessential Kashmiri. First and last, he is Kashmiri. And it does show up at times. But he's much more of an optimist, so he doesn't get bogged down by whatever the complexities of Kashmir are, because he's his own man and he can stand his ground anywhere. So not necessarily he will get into all these complexities. But one thing which shows his Kashmiriness, which he says time and time again, that Delhi doesn't trust us. That's one of the main problems. Now, he said this, interestingly, even when he was a union cabinet minister here with UPA 2, in an interview to Saeed Naqvi, at the end when Saeed said, what is the problem in Kashmir? And Dr. Farooq said that we are not trusted. Now that is a sad commentary on, the relationship between Delhi and Srinagar.
What about Mehbooba?
Everybody does to some extent. Mehbooba too. No Kashmiri is immune to it. But she is the younger generation, and she has a future. And there are a lot of people, there are a lot of takers for her in the valley. But as compared to the Abdullahs, the Muftis have always lived in the shadow of the Abdullahs, and there is that complex that this this family has ruled for so many years. After all, nobody can forget Sheikh Saab, and I don't think anybody can forget Dr. Farooq in a hurry. He's too big. So
you've also written on the same subject. You've written it's not easy to decipher the Kashmiri psyche, or even to win Kashmiri confidence. Centuries of foreign rule, from the Mughals to the Afghans to the Sikhs, have made them natural agents. By now, it is in their DNA. Now, isn't it kind of colonial to describe a race of people with sweeping generalizations? This is the kind of thing that the British used to write about India.
No, you're right in a way, that it is a bit sweeping. But somewhere, the Kashmiri is very mixed up. And therefore...
But we are mixed up as people also.
Of course we are. But, the Kashmiri is more mixed up. Or let me put it like this, that we made him more mixed up. To give you an example, if you're talking one-to-one with a Kashmiri, any Kashmiri, and I've talked to a lot of them, they're very open, they're very frank, they're quite straight if they begin to believe you. But get to other Kashmiris and then it's time for you to leave the room, because then they will get into their own way of talking.
Which is? Which
is that there is a lack of trust between Kashmiris.
And India.
And of course India, yes.
Or Kashmiris amongst themselves.
Kashmiris among themselves as well.
You wrote that you negotiated the release of Dr. Rubaiya Sayeed. How did you connect with the kidnappers and what did your negotiations entail?
This was the first kidnapping of its kind in Kashmir. So it was a very significant moment in Kashmir, and it was a watershed which impacted a lot on what followed.
So did it then set the paradigm that India will negotiate with terrorists?
Well, more than the paradigm, it opened the floodgates really for militancy. Till then, even these boys who picked up Rubaiya, did so, I think, accidentally, or it was, a second or third choice, because they were aiming to actually pick up Farooq's daughter, eldest daughter, Safiya. And then they realized that the security in that area, in Gupkar Road, where Dr. Farooq lived, was very tight. And
so she was an easy target. But
in the meantime, what happened, Mufti Saab became Union Home Minister. So the whole attention, the whole focus shifted on Mufti. And somebody, one of these boys said, well, he has a daughter who comes to this Lal Ded hospital 3-4 times a week. So she's an easy target, because she used to go back by, public transport, tempo or something. And so that's what they did. They picked her out of the tempo and took her to Sopore.
Can you take us through the negotiations? You were speaking directly to the kidnappers?
No, never got a chance to speak to the kidnappers. It all happened very fast. I won't claim to be a negotiator in the classical sense. I was the backup man for the chief secretary who was he was the interlocutor.
He was negotiating.
He was negotiating, and I was backing him up because, he was with us most of the time, Mr. Musa Raza, who was the chief secretary then. And what we did manage to do was to get to the father of one of these boys, who was, at that point of time, you could say the main JKLF leader. There's a boy called Ashfaq Majid Wani. His father was a government clerk or a senior clerk, whatever. And we got to him. And that's what gave us a feel of what was happening. And he had a long conversation, and we figured that what they wanted was the release of one of their colleagues who was in hospital, Hamid Sheikh. And they would have been quite happy with his release. That's all they wanted. At the end of that conversation that we had with this gentleman, he even, he got emotional, and he caught my hand and he said, Delhi has never been fair to us. These boys, I assure you, are good boys, and no harm will come to Rubaiya. And if Delhi does nothing, she will still get released. But what happened was that a lot of people got into the act, and mostly people known to Mufti Saab, who suddenly arrived and showed concern, and each one became a negotiator. So then the stakes got raised. And Dr. Farooq, in fact, who was the chief minister, was not...
So India lost control of the negotiations?
Well, as I said, there was no real negotiation in the classical sense. We never got to the kidnappers. We only got to the father of one of them. And Dr. Farooq, in fact, was in London when this happened. He came back 3 days later on the 11th of December. The kidnapping happened on the 8th. And then he said that he was not willing to go along with this. And we tried to explain to him that we'll have to release one person.
No, but if so many people were negotiating with the kidnappers and India was not directly, you saying that Indians were not directly speaking to the kidnappers, how did the demands go up so high?
The demands went up high because, as I say, instead of just the chief secretary and me talking to these people and negotiating, there were 3-4 other people who got into the act.
Who were these?
There was a judge of the Allahabad High Court, Motilal Bhatt, I think his name was. He was a friend of Mufti Saab's. There was an MLA who later got killed, and there were a couple of journalists, all who were known to Mufti Saab, and all who showed a lot of anxiety about the safety of the girl. And at the end of it, Delhi felt that, well, 5 days was enough, and even if 5 people have to be released, so be it, because we need to get Mufti Saab's daughter back. And ultimately what happened on the 13th was that these 2 ministers arrived, Mr. Gujral and Arif Muhammad Khan. And we had this conversation early in the morning in the chief minister's hammam in his house. And so they had come with a clear message that this has to be done. So Dr. Farooq said, okay, if it is to be done, then my dissent has to be recorded. And he sent a note to the governor saying that.
Now, in the hijack situation, it has been reported that SS Tomar, a raw operative, was also on the flight. And it's also been reported that he was closely related to N.K. Singh, who was in the PMO at that time. His eldest sister, N.K. Singh's eldest sister, Shama, is married to the man who once led the force, I'm reading from here, once led the force which ought to have carried out a rescue attempt when the hijacked aircraft was in Amritsar. Now, his wife, Tomar's wife, Sonia, is the youngest sister of N.K. Singh. Is it true, as it has been reported, that a proposal to send commandos in was sabotaged by N.K. Singh?
Not at all, not at all. As a matter of fact, nobody knew about this except for us in the RNAW, because he was one of our officers. It was just bad luck or pure coincidence that he happened to be on that flight from Kathmandu to Delhi. Nobody knew about it except for us and, of course, the family. NK knew and Nikhil knew. And
so NK must have been active.
They were very anxious, but all this was not a consideration at all. And when the Amritsar thing happened, NK was nowhere around, you know. This only came up the following day, and so there was no question. And this matter was never raised in any conversation or discussion at any level. We knew it, they knew it, and that was it. And they were keeping their fingers crossed, and we were keeping our fingers crossed. And that's why people have questioned why I didn't mention this. I feel there are certain things which need not be mentioned, because, then people will give this kind of twist like somebody has done.
You've written about the time that when Jagmohan was appointed governor, Joginder Singh, to impress the new governor, rounded up 300 youngsters.
Yeah.
Now, that's insane. And then there was, the valley erupted with protests.
What happened was that there's a little background to Jagmohan's appointment, because Jagmohan was coming for the second time, and Farooq had made it well known that Mr. Jagmohan was not acceptable to him. He had told the Prime Minister VP Singh, as well as his friend George Fernandez here, who was a minister, that if Jagmohan comes, I go. And so it was that kind of thing. And true to his word, on 19th of January 1990, Jagmohan got appointed as governor, and Farooq resigned the same day.
What was the reason for Farooq despising Jagmohan so much?
Well, actually, it goes back to 1984. If you recall, Farooq was dismissed in 84, and his brother-in-law, G.M. Shah, was brought in. Now, this was all decided in Delhi. If you remember, at that point of time, the governor was B.K. Nehru, and Mr. B.K. Nehru refused to be a party to this removal of Farooq. So he said, if this has to be done in the way that you're wanting it done, because he made it very clear to G.M. Shah that if you have the numbers, produce them. And G.M. Shah said, I'll prove my majority in the assembly. And Mr. Nehru said, no, that's not acceptable to me. This is Kaldagri. So that's why he was shifted to Gujarat.
You've also written...
And Mr. Jagmohan was brought in to do the deed. So, Farooq never forgot that. Also, we have to remember that in 86, there was a Rajiv Farooq Accord, 87 elections. And the relationship even after that, although what I saw, because I happened to be there, Dr. Farooq always gave the governor due respect. But it was not an easy relationship. It was not a comfortable relationship,
You spoke about G.M. Shah being made chief minister after dismissing Farooq. You also wrote in that context that a lot of money was spent on G.M. Shah, and B.K. Nehru, the code word was bullets. And it was Tirath Ram Amla who was the go-between, and it went in an IB bag.
This is what Mr. Nehru
Cash
says.
went in an IB bag to G.M. Shah.
I am only quoting Mr. Nehru's book. Nice guys finish second. This is what he says. So what I was trying to say is there was a lot of noise about money, after I left the PMO. That, I had bribed my way through Kashmir, that I had spoiled the Kashmiris, I had given them money. I said, why has this money become such a big issue? Money has always been there in Kashmir. It goes back to Sheikh Saab's time. And then I quoted Mr. B.K. Nehru, who says that, GM Shah was always running out of bullets because he needed more and more money.
You have also written that Sheikh Abdullah complained that Kashmir had been corrupted by Delhi bribing people to keep them in power.
Yeah.
You've written since Sheikh Abdullah's time, anybody who's been on the right side of Delhi has been getting money from Delhi. It's as simple as that. That's what you've written. Now that you have exposed that fact, which Kashmiri will take the risk of supporting India's point of view? Haven't you just about killed it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think, this is a wrong thing. A lot of people have told me that you burnt your bridges in Kashmir. My bridges don't matter at all, I'm so many years retired now.
No, not burning your bridges, but I think you burnt India's bridges.
No, what I'm trying to say is that this book is all about building bridges. If somebody reads this book, it is for Kashmir, Kashmiris, and the main theme in this book is how to build bridges. So I don't think any bridge is burnt. Yesterday, despite Delhi turning him down time and time again, the Mirwais again has made a statement saying we are prepared to talk to Delhi if Mr. Modi is, if Delhi wants to talk to us.
So was he given money to say that, you think?
Now that your guess is as good as mine. I don't think so.
So you see, you have created a cloud.
I don't think so. I don't think so. No, everybody didn't take money and everybody didn't do it for money.
But now we don't know.
Yeah, you don't need to know. I don't think anybody needs to know who got and who didn't get. The point is, the only point I've made is that when people made this great noise about money, what I was trying to say was that money has been going on in Kashmir.
But history doesn't make it right. Just by saying it's been going on, that doesn't make it a successful strategy. May I just ask the next question?
Sure.
This has been reported that regardless of all this, we keep funding these treacherous parasites. Here are some, this from New Indian Express. Here are some startling revelations about J&K government's expenses of Kashmiri separatists in 5 years. Salaries for guards to protect the Kashmiri separatist leaders, 309 crores. Salaries for private security guards, 150 crores. Hotel bills, 21 crores. Fuel expenses, 26.43 crores. All this adds up to 506 crores, 0.43 crores.
For their security.
For everything. For hotel bills, fuel, salaries, everything.
Hotel bills are for the security people.
So
not
this
the
is our money, taxpayers' money, being spent.
Why do we need to call these separatists treacherous, whatever has been mentioned?
Or I don't call them treacherous.
No.
You call them separatists.
Yeah, they are
The
separatists.
point is that after spending 506
you see, separatism
crores,
is a thought in
nothing has
Kashmir.
changed.
You see, separatism is a thought in Kashmir. Now, by whatever we do, we cannot make that thought go away unless you engage with them. You know, what we've been trying to do since 1947, and I would say that we've succeeded hugely, is to try and mainstream Kashmir. We are still at it. But somewhere, there have been hiccups and it gets stopped. I don't know why. Because this is the logical thing. The accommodation that the Kashmiri seeks will ultimately come with mainstreaming, but you have to give him confidence that he will have a level playing field. He's as good as anybody. I'm quite sure Gilani Saab will disagree with me and shout very loudly. But if he could be assured that he would be chief minister, he'd be willing to be chief minister.
But how genuine could the support for India be if it's been bought?
I'm not saying buying it. I'm not suggesting buying it. Please, let's leave money out. Now that I've said money has been used, let's leave money out. It's a question of convincing people that, Delhi is not against you, that Kashmir is as much a part of India as the rest, and democracy in Kashmir will be as good as democracy in the rest of the country. Because that's another issue that Kashmiri has, that you have double standards, India is a great democracy, but that democracy doesn't apply here.
In what way?
Now, what way is his way of thinking? But my point is, it is for us to convince him that by providing, as I say, a level playing field, you see, the Kashmiri thinks that every election is fixed.
Which it has been historically.
No, but there have been elections which they concede themselves, which 2002 was a pretty good election. Before that, the election during Morarji's time, which the Kashmiris always say has been the best election. So there have been elections which have been absolutely. This last election, I don't think anybody would have an issue with. I don't think the 2008 election
Well, Farooq did have an issue with, because he says after he lost the election, he said to you, now I know what you people have, Delhi has been doing. That he implied that the money from Delhi was going to Mufti.
No, that was said, you're referring to the 2002 election. He was very angry. It was said in a fit of rage. But again, let me take you back to the context of 2002. You see what happened in 2002, a lot of games were played. Although the election was free and fair, Delhi wanted, and I've said this, admitted this in the book, Delhi wanted Farooq out and Umar in. Because again, there's a little background to it that, there had been prior to 2001, the Assembly had passed a resolution on autonomy, the National Conference, and Delhi was not very happy with that. So they wanted Farooq to come to Delhi and Umar to be Chief Minister. That was okay. That was Delhi's wish, but it didn't happen.
So that's not a democracy if Delhi is dictating who...
It was not dictating. That's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly my point. That, every government, every individual has a certain, a desire or a wish. That's what Delhi wanted to see, but it didn't happen that way. The election went quite differently. And, everybody said that the National Conference would get 35 seats. They only got 28, and Umar himself lost his election. So a lot of things happened. So what Farooq said to me was in a fit of anger or frustration. That now I know what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, so he was being truthful.
Who?
Farooq.
He was being truthful in some ways, and the rest of it was frustration. He was being truthful in the way that he had been telling me throughout, Umar is my son. He's going to succeed me. Everybody knows that. Why are you guys in such a hurry? What's the rush? Let him learn. I would like him to be understudy with me for a couple of years. Then it's all his. Let him take over in a natural way. You want to plonk him here, and it may not go down well. And a lot of people think that if Umar had not been projected as CM candidate and Farooq had remained, the National Conference may not have lost. So there are many ifs and buts.
You have written in your book that at least you're not killing people like the ISI, and money is a far more effective way of getting people on India's side.
I think I said ethical.
You see, using money to win people over is perhaps the most effective tool at the disposal of the intelligence officers, not just in Kashmir. Most agents are paid agents.
Yeah, that's
all over the world. If in Kashmir, for instance, you find someone who is working for the ISI, you just offer a lot more money than it does, meaning ISI does. Perhaps he will be afraid of getting killed by the ISI, but at the very least you have neutralized him. Corrupting a person by giving money is not only a lot more ethical than killing him. Only a raw man could say that. That you say, okay, bribing is okay, killing is not okay.
Maybe it's been put a little crudely. Let me explain this. See, what I'm trying to say is that the reason money came into play at that point of time, it's always been there. We used to keep hearing that the ISI is paying so much to so-and-so, the ISI is paying this much, that much, the ISI pays so much. So I said, what's the problem? I mean, if it's only a question of payment, I'm sure we can also make payments. So that's the only point I'm trying to make.
But do you think that policy that you've said that it started during Indira Gandhi's time? So it's years and years.
It must have started much earlier.
All right, since Jawaharlal Nehru's time. Or should we say the British?
Could be. Could be.
Whatever, so you can go back to BC. Yeah, but the point is the policy...
You see, when Sheikh Saab says that everybody who was on Delhi's side or everybody who's been on Delhi's side has got money, I think what he's probably hinting at is that his own removal or arrest in 53 and Bakshi Ghulam Ahmad's coming in. I suppose that's the hint, that because he was Delhi's man, so he must have been paid.
But the point that I'm asking is the fact that money has been paid since centuries now, or at least since decades, it hasn't solved the Kashmir problem in any sense.
No, money won't solve the problem.
Then
no.
why are we doing it?
That's why, no. I mean, if somebody is being paid money, you know, this thing is again hugely exaggerated. But if somebody is being paid money at some point of time, it's just to keep him in good humor and say that, you know, why do you need Pakistani money? Indian money is as good. But
they get branded,
in
don't
the
they?
long, I agree with you that money is not going to solve our problem. In fact, you know, all these plans and grants and this, that, and the other, let's, I mean, we have to, I think, understand, acknowledge, Kashmir is not an economic problem. The common Kashmiri is much better off than, I think, an Indian anywhere else. But it is a political problem. It's an emotive problem. It's a psychological problem. It's deep inside the Kashmiri psyche. Okay, no. We have grievances. We have matters. We need resolution of these matters. And so he will talk of, you know, a full and final settlement of Kashmir, or that kind of thing.
As has happened, say there is a militant who's a known militant who's anti-Indian, and suddenly, as has happened, he gets a huge house. All the people around him know that this man is now suddenly got a lot of money, and he has no running business except for militancy. Obviously, the money has come from Delhi, and he's a marked man. So ISI would definitely get him.
I don't think any militant has built huge houses in Kashmir. No, no.
Yassin Malik?
What this book has
How about
done,
Yassin Malik?
I don't think he has huge houses. And if he has huge houses, then it's probably Pakistani money.
So the militants are taking, or the separatists are taking money from both sides?
See, this is exactly what the Kashmiri is happy about this book. You know, the separatists are not happy. But the normal Kashmiri, I've got a lot of phone calls who said, now you have clarified what we always had doubted, meaning that these guys are taking money not only from Pakistan, but from both sides. Now, who's taking and who's not taking, we have not said. But there would be some people who do take money from both sides. And I think this is well known in Kashmir.
Now, going back to this Joginder Singh, when he rounded up 300 youngsters, you didn't answer that question actually, because if...
Yeah, we went drifted away.
We drifted
somewhere.
away. So 300 youngsters are being rounded up just for an exhibition for Jagmohan, and
it was a miscalculation.
And it created a huge problem the next week when people were out on the streets protesting.
Yeah.
Which means that India is working in a way that they can casually round up 300 youngsters for exhibition purposes with no responsibility, and the fact that it alienates the Kashmiri even more. Isn't there some sense of what is right, or what is ethical, or what is good for the country, for India in fact?
It was a miscalculation.
But there must be more like that.
Yeah, there have been.
Could you give some examples?
I can't immediately think of any, but let me...
I'll give you a few minutes.
Let me put it like this, that, you know, coming back from, you know, the extremely difficult situation or position that we were in the winter of 89-90 or 90, 91, 92, it required the army, it required the paramilitary forces, it required the intelligence services, and it required, of course, the JK police to do that. But, you know, a lot has happened since then, and a lot happened at that point of time. Coming to this thing about rounding up 300 people, you see, as I said, it was just some people in the exuberance of Mr. Jagmohan's appointment. Because when Mr. Jagmohan, see, in winter the Darbar is in Jammu. So Mr. Jagmohan arrived in Jammu on the 19th of January. So there was a lot of celebration there in Jammu. And in that whole thing, somebody, I think, misinformed the IGCRPF that, you know, I think it's time to round up all the militants in downtown Srinagar. So they were looking for militants. Now, how many militants were rounded up, nobody knows, because nobody could identify it. I don't think too many militants were rounded up. And poor Mr. Joginder Singh was stuck with 300 boys. And
poor
that,
Mr. Joginder, poor boys, rounded up for nothing.
Yeah, poor boys.
Look at
and
the
what happened
the
following...
alienation of the population.
Yeah, the alienation of the population came out the next night, because on the 20th, the whole of Srinagar came out onto the streets.
Yes, because of Joginder Singh's antics.
There was wailing and screaming and shouting, and I was at a colleague's place for dinner in Barzula, which is way out, and I thought, if this crowd comes in, we are going to be lynched alive.
Yeah.
I never get home. So it was like that. And when Mr. Jagmohan arrived, he was naturally angry because, Srinagar was in bad shape.
So, are there any other incidents that you can tell us where something like that happened?
You see, what people keep talking about, and I think it's undeniable, that during, in restoring or bringing back Kashmir to normalcy, there were some instances in which, excess or excessive force was used. And some of those people were punished also.
So people dying in custody?
There were not too many cases of people dying in custody.
Wrong people picked up?
Not too many again.
Innocent
you see,
people,
when you have such a difficult insurgency situation, there are bound to be, from
so
time
that's
to time,
collateral damage.
Some excess somewhere. There's bound to be, but the thing is that by and large, I think by and large, we have dealt with militancy in the most humane way, the best way possible. And I think this is appreciated all over the world.
Not exactly. It's not appreciated because
it's not
human rights.
It's not. I was coming to that. It's not
appreciated
by
all.
Amnesty and
yes.
That the human rights
so
bodies. Because there have been cases. There have been cases.
So,
but those are very few cases.
But the point is that
it doesn't happen all the time.
The fallout of such behavior, as rounding up innocent people, young people, arresting the wrong person.
I agree with you entirely. It does lead to alienation. And that is why Mufti Saab's tenure from 2002 to 2005, why people still look back to that and remember that period, is because he said, we're going to provide a healing touch. Now, healing touch is very high sounding, but what Mufti Saab did do was stop a lot of these, just people being taken off buses and searched and that kind of thing. And the Kashmiri, some of his self-respect was restored.
Is that come back now, this time around?
No, unfortunately, Mufti Saab has very little touch now. He's a much older man, and he is being pressurized too much by Delhi. If you ask me what needs to be done in Kashmir, I think Mufti needs to be supported. There is no other option. This is a good alliance. It can bring Jammu and Kashmir together.
With India.
And so Mufti needs to be supported fully. And once Mufti,
his release
Mufti is supported and feels comfortable, then I think we need to move on to the next stage of talking to separatists.
You've spoken about Masarat's release.
Yeah. Now I can put it in two ways. I think Masarat's release was a mistake Mufti Saab made. But what Delhi doesn't understand and what we all don't understand is that a politician in Kashmir has his own compulsions. And, Mufti Saab was also criticized because I was there that day for the swearing in. And soon after that, he made a press statement in which he thanked Pakistan and he thanked the separatists for allowing elections. Now, people in drawing rooms in Delhi, they say Mufti he's a Pakistani, he's anti-national. Now, my question is that if Mufti Saab, who has been Union Home Minister, has to prove his Indianness, and if he is pro-Pakistani, then I can say that there is no Indian in Kashmir. So that's not the way to look at this thing. These are two very tall leaders, Mufti and Dr. Farooq. And Farooq is much taller than Mufti.
Isn't it odd to thank another country for allowing elections to be democratic and free? without violence.
It's very difficult.
It's very peculiar.
As I say, it's very difficult to understand. It's sitting here between you and me. But these are compulsions of Kashmiri leaders. They live through difficult times and difficult situations. And I think in that, also since he'd just been sworn in, I think Mufti Sahib got perhaps a little carried away. But I understand where he's coming from, and I would never doubt his Indianness. He is Indian, first and last. He's more, I mean, in that sense, he's more Indian than Dr. Farooq, who I call the ultimate nationalist. But Dr. Farooq is Kashmiri first and Kashmiri last. Mufti, you might say, would like to be Indian first and then Kashmiri. But it's a very complex...
He'd like to be Indian first?
Yeah.
How do you say that?
He was Union Home Minister here, wasn't he?
But his whole base is in Kashmir. He is Kashmiri.
He is Kashmiri. But you know, he spent his whole life in the Congress party. Let's not forget that.
So maybe Delhi gave him more money than anybody else?
No. Please don't. No. Mufti Sahib doesn't need money. He has enough resources. But the thing is that, you know, the backgrounds are different. As I've said, I think Farooq is the ultimate nationalist. But he, after all, is a leader, is a Kashmiri leader. And he belongs to the regional party, the party which has ruled and dominated Kashmir for all these years, the National Congress. Mufti Sahib has been part of the mainstream all his life. He's belonged to the Congress. It's only now that he's drifted off and sort of proven himself to be also a regional factor, a regional force.
You wrote about the tea party that Musharraf gave when he was here, and at that party, Lone had said, "We are tired, you're only getting Kashmiris killed," and he's fed up of the whole thing. Gilani objected, said, "We are not tired, we will never be tired," and everybody around him, you wrote, was upset to say that we'll never be tired, because Kashmiris are, don't you think that Kashmiris are getting it from all sides, and they've been used by the powers around them, and they are justified in feeling bitter? सबको फ्री न्यूज़ चाहिए, पैसे कौन देगा? Subscribe to our newsletter. Get to know more.